I've never seen a player like Abedi Pele combine pace with skill, with goals, with energy, a bundle of energy. In almost every single match, he controlled the midfield. When Jam missed that penalty, Sika cannot just slammed and had to be revived. Water was poured on him. It was so sad because we were kicked away from the semi-final. It's very sad moment.
Well, they say better late than never. So after weeks, days, a few months of asking, I get to sit with a man that I know pretty well, a man who took me under his care after journalism school, gave me a newspaper to manage, and played a massive role in making me the media executive that I am today. But he's also a man full of stories. He's also a man who's lived across multiple generations of Ghana football. He's a man who's rode with presidents, who's rode with football association bosses, who knows players inside out. A man who has outlived your best footballers, your most famous ones, and the greatest generations of Ghanaian sportsmen. My guest today is Kwabena Yeboah. We're building up to the 2026 FIFA World Cup. So please, if you've not subscribed to this YouTube channel, please go ahead and do it. And if you've not liked or subscribed to any of the 3 sports pages, whether on Facebook, on Instagram, on X, and the rest, do that for us quickly as well. Kwabena, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you too for coming. I wanted to pull you out. Which these days is quite an achievement.
It's an honor
yes,
to be here.
You do and say very little these days. Is that a deliberate decision?
I've been talking all my life, and I thought I got into a point where I had to slow down a bit and pace myself and speak to important people like you. So this is where I find myself today.
It's brilliant. And in journalism terms, is it only GTV Sports highlights that's taking your time these days?
That is the core thing I do, mainly on Monday evenings. And then beyond that, maybe doing top tournaments like World Cup, where I have to host it, and sometimes doing the Africa Cup of Nations. But beyond that, I speak to other stations. I've owed a duty. So, for example, anytime I travel with the Black Stars, I do not think that I only owe it a duty to speak to journalists from GTV. I speak to journalists from all over the world. I mean, all over the country. So mainly Kumasi, my colleagues in Kumasi. The last time we were in Germany, in Austria, I spoke a number of times to, for example, Angel, to my colleagues in Takrad, in Cape Coast, in Accra. So basically to share my views and my opinions and sentiments across board.
I'm wondering, as you've, and I mentioned you've been across multiple, how many years have you been hosting Sports Highlights? We want to hear from the hosts.
Well, it's been a while. I started, that would be around 94 precisely, 1994. Now, let me put it on record. Sports Highlights is a program I've always loved growing up. When in secondary school, around 1971, 72, there was a gentleman who was absolutely brilliant, Winston Davis, fair Khaled, and I always admired him. And anytime I went to the Accra Sports Stadium to watch matches and Winston Davis was interviewing people, I would go and stand behind him, eager to, to be caught by the camera.
To appear on the TV.
To appear on the television. The early 70s. And then later on, Ed Fachi took over. It's always been a very popular program, not because I host it, but because it gives you the highlights of all the week's events, all the games you missed during the week. That's an opportunity. It's a one-stop shop. That's an opportunity to catch all the news. So it was always very, very popular. In those days, the league games were very, very, very exciting. So every Monday, fans across the nation were very eager to catch the highlights on Sports Highlights. So after Winston Davies came Edward Fachi, and then after Edward Fachi, Edward Fachi hosted it for a very long time. And then the then government, the PNDC, introduced a program called The Commentary. And they needed a very matured person to go and read it. So Edward Fachi was nice. Emmanuel Simpson took over. But before Emmanuel Simpson took over, Comrade Japan was made to host the program. At that time, he was the youngest person to host Sports Highlights. Those days, young people were not allowed to host programs. Nobody wanted to make any error at all. So Kwabena Japan at that time was the youngest host the program. And let me put it on record, he was absolutely brilliant as a host of the program and also running commentary for the nation. Again, he was one of the best commentators. So after that, Emmanuel Simpson took over. And then 94, I took over. And I've been hosting it ever since.
What is it like? One of the first things I observed when I was working with you was the crazy hours it involves. Everybody sits behind their TV. They want to see highlights from whether La Liga. And it wasn't, those weren't the days of DSTV you record. How much work have you had to put in just to make sure that people don't take that remote and switch off pretty quickly?
Yeah, I mean, thank God I loved what I did. But you know, those, as you said, we're showing the highlights of the league. But beyond that, I realized that people are also excited about the foreign leagues, particularly during the days of Kwabena Yeboah in Germany and at Leeds, and the great maestro Abedi Pele with Olympique Marseille. They wanted footage of those matches. So what I did, and I must give a lot of credit to Eben Mensah, former chairman of Asante Kotoko, who was then the Mnet country manager. So, you know, the issue of rights was such that you needed their endorsement to be able to show some of these highlights. So we had to go all the way to South Africa during one of the trips to speak to their marketing manager, Etienne Haynes, who gave us permission to record some of their highlights to show on our program. And as he said, it was quite tedious because I normally recorded on Canal Plus, and Canal Plus was not on many of the channels. So I was privileged to have a friend in Walter Esposito and Harry Zakor. So in the night, I would go record Sunday night, and then Monday morning go to GBC to edit the whole piece. And also because it was in French, after the editing, you come home and go through all the pieces and run notes for the evening presentation. So it was tedious, but it wasn't tedious to me. Tedious in code, but because I enjoyed it, I loved it, and particularly because the fans loved what I was doing, and it made them happy. It made me happy, and so long as they were happy, I was happy, and I enjoyed doing it.
Take us a bit back to where all of this started. You told us about Harry and wanting to be caught on camera, but you also, in your own right, founded maybe next to Graphic Sports, the most dominant sports newspaper in Ghana. How did you get into this decision that, one, journalism was something you wanted to go into, but at the time, journalists were not really entrepreneurs? And how did you decide that this newspaper business was something worth putting your energy, effort in to be able to feed your family?
Okay, let me say, I always talk about divine intervention. Because growing up, I was never interested in journalism. It was not something that never, ever, ever crossed my mind. You know, growing up, everybody wanted to be a doctor or an engineer or an astronaut and all that. I wanted to be a lawyer. And my parents were in the UK. So I got to school in the Manchester University to go and read law. And then I was supposed to go for a visa. Within that period, I just changed my mind and decided to go to the School of Journalism.
Your father was not happy.
My daddy was extremely upset. So my slot at the school was kept for over 1 year. And it's something that he never forgave me for. But, you know, I've always liked or loved writing. So as far back as 1978, I used to write to Graphic, but mainly in the form of letters. Unfortunately, they never got published until 1979, 1980, when two of my pieces were published by All Sports, which is the only sports paper in the country, edited by M.B. Bremer and KJB Ababio. Before that, you know, there was a Sporting News, also edited by Hinaba Charles, the great man. You know, so at that time, I started writing, and then after school, I went and worked with Sports and Lotto. That was around 1980. Sports and Lotto, also edited by M.B. Bremer. And I loved those days, traveling all the way to Kumasi to go and report Kotogo 11 Wise games, going to second year to report Azakes and all that. And then MB Brahma suddenly resigned from the paper, and then they decided to make me the editor of the paper. I didn't think I was competent enough and ready for the job as an editor of the paper because I was only 20 years. But MB Brahma promised, although he had gone and found his own paper, which was the Sporting Times, he would assist me. Unfortunately, he did not. So I went to see Samia Dwaje, who was then the editor of Times. He was very supportive, but I didn't like the stories he was aiding me with, mainly on horse racing. So I switched over to Francis Eswell, who was the deputy sports editor, and then later switched on to Ahinba Charles, who was absolutely brilliant. It was the first time he taught me how to write editorials and would aid me. So it was after that period that I founded the guide, the sports guide, which will later metamorphose into the daily guide you see today on the market. So I edited for a while, and then there were problems. I'm not going to delve into those problems, so I had to leave and found the Africa Sports around 1985, 1986. There were lots of problems because John Rogers, the then head of state, in his eagerness to control the media, had decided to criminalize the importation of newsprint. So it was very, very tedious getting newsprint.
Newsprint is the paper that the newspapers are printed.
That's right. And then also introduced what he called the newspaper licensing law. He made a law where you had to apply for a license, and in the absence of a license, you were imprisoned for 10 years. And it wasn't easy. You had to also pay a fine of about 10 million. And it was very funny. Journalism has metamorphosed into a very, very democratic arena these days. Yeah. Because those days, when the newspaper licensing law was introduced, those of us who were privileged to have the license, and it was mainly the sports papers who were giving the license. Even with that, once you wrote your piece, you had to submit your piece to the then general manager of Ghanaian Times, called Kutin Mensah, for Kutin to read through your script and then determine which ones had to be published and which ones didn't have to see the day of light. And then after reading everything, he had to sign with his green pen. So once the lino operators didn't see that green pen, there was no way they were going to work on your piece. I mean, that's how tough times were those days. But we enjoyed doing what we did. So we started the Africa Sports, and thank God, the fans loved reading it. And we went on for a very long time until finally leaving the market.
You, in my time with you, I've heard some really incredible stories. Not with the newspapers, but also in those days, so 84, 85, 86, the Black Stars were beginning to tank a bit. But before then, you were still running around. For instance, did you see Ghana win the 1982 Nations Cup?
Well, I have to go back a bit to 1977, when, for the first time, Kojo Adai Chenchehene took me to the Black Stars camp. And I owe him a great deal of credit. You know, in 1975, I had gone to Kodoko's camp as a ball boy. I started all the way back to Okwao Stores. At that time, we had Okwao Stores and Okwao Super Boma, then later merged to become Okwao United. And they'll keep me in their dressing room for me to keep charge of the candles because they believe so much in superstition. The captain of the side at that time, called Motorway, after every game, would give me 20 pesos. So from Okwao Stores, then to Acotex. That was around 1973. Akuzumo Textiles. You know, those were the days of Mekaino, Ochre, Ohinabasiao, Mac. And they had about 5, 6 of the players in the national team. And, you know, those were the days that Acotex beat us Antico by 3 goals to 0. It was unbelievable.
So which receiving?
And at that time, they were not always at the receiving end. But it was a major upset. Nobody understood. It was on a Wednesday. So after that, you know, Acotex were so dominant, they played against Hearts of Oak in the FA final on about 3 occasions. A winner could still not be determined. And eventually, Hearts of Oak triumphed. Those were the days of the fearsome fivesome. You know, I've never seen a more trenchant attack in my life than the fearsome fivesome.
Why was it called the fearsome fivesome?
Because Mohamed Polo Anas Seydu, Mamakwa, Robert Hammond, and Peter Lamte. Each one of them could score any time of the day. I mean, they were so good, it was unbelievable. When Hearts of Oak were going to play, it wasn't a question whether they were going to win or not. It was a question of how many goals they were going to score. Adofama was the second best midfielder in Africa. He did not even qualify to be in the Fearsome Five-Some. And that was how good the team was. I mean, and that is how those days the stands were filled to the rafters every time they played, because Hammond alone, we call him Expensive Hammond, would drag the fans to the stadium. Polo would drag his own fans. Peter Lamte, the goal thief, 3 times goal king.
Where did they get these nicknames from? The goal thief.
I mean,
You get quite a number of them. How do you come up with those nicknames?
they were just expert. For example, Anas Seydu was called Thunder.
And tear the net.
Absolutely. And I remember on one occasion, his free kick sent my mentor, Chenchene, down for some time. He couldn't continue the match. So that was an extraordinary period. So my point is, from that time, when I joined Kodoko as a ball boy in 1975, Chenchene had visited us in camp. And I remember him asking when he was going to be a regular member of the team, because he was more of a reserve player. And those were the days of Butchie, Ose Kofi's, the twilight of his career. Dadopon, Yasam, Gordon Prempe, you know, and I was privileged to be serving them. We used to camp at Tech, the Unity Hall, and I was there with another young boy. We were 2 in camp. So in 1977, when Chenchene, when he visited Cam on one occasion, we were playing table tennis. I don't know what came of me. I just told him, I promise you next year you come and join us. I don't know. I was young, quite naive. I didn't know what I was talking about. And truly in 1977, Chenchene hit the headlines. You know, those days we didn't have many newspapers on the market. Yeah. And Chenchene was on the cover of the Mirror when we were going to play against Hearts of Oak in Accra. And the headline was Chenchene Storms Accra. So from 77, he was picked to the national team. And then suddenly, he became so fond of me, he picked me to his house in Asamase. And I became his young brother. So in 77, he took me to the Black Stars camp. He shared a room with Haruna Yusuf, so they gave me the blanket to sleep on the floor. So that's how come I entered the national team around 1977. And that's when I started traveling with them. For the first time, I traveled with them to Swedro when the Stars went and played against Vancouver. And that's when we picked Francis Kumi, who became a member of the team. So 1978 was the first time I watched the AFCON at Accra Sports Stadium. And I'm so fond of that particular team. That was an extraordinary team. And you know, 1977, the then head of state of Ghana, Tutua Champon, had made himself, he loved sports so much, he made himself the commissioner of sports.
Minister of Sports, the equivalent now.
Absolutely, the minister of sports. And appointed a special assistant, Simpra Asante. So one day when he came there and asked which nation in the world were so good at football, they said Brazil. So he declared, as the then commissioner of sports, that in 1977 there will be no league in Ghana. So we played what we call the Novelty League. The entire team then had to go to Brazil for a 3-month period. They came back to look after their families, went back. The whole of the year was camping for the Black Stars. And that was an extraordinary team. Joseph Carr in post. His assistant, Husseini, also played for Kotoko. Carr at that time was with Azakis. And they had Abdullah Chisco for SS74. On the right side, they had Haruna Yusuf and PSK Paha, Ofansa on the left side. You had Isaac Akwe, who was in top shape, and Awule Kwe, the captain on the side, as well as Kukudazi in central defense. And they had Adai Chenchene and Adofama in midfield, Yosing on the right side, together with Dan Kaide, not Ben Kaide. Ben was his younger brother. Yeah. And then Opukwa Free and George Alasa in the attack, and then Razak on the left side. And then we had Mohamed Polo on the left side. Ajman Prempe was the most informed player. Unfortunately, he got injured just before the tournament, so he couldn't play. So they brought Kuntu Blangsing and Francis Kumi. This was the squad of 78.
And the team went on to win the Nations Cup.
Listen, before the tournament was started, we had printed victory T-shirts. And I remember that was the first time we saw Adidas balls at a stadium, because helicopters brought the Adidas balls to the stadium. Victory shirts. Everybody knew we were going to win that particular tournament. Willie Kluche was also assistant to George Alasa and Opokwa Friye. And he scored the winning goal against Nigeria. You know, it was an extraordinary tournament. We were in no doubt that we were going to win that particular tournament. I mean, if you go through our history, the great squads of this nation, you want to mention the 78 squad, the 92 squad, the 2006 squad, and then the 2010 squads.
I like that you have sort of, because I was going to ask you to sort of place them. But even then, for younger audiences now, and you still keep in touch with football heavily, how good was Mohamed Polo in comparison to the greatest players in the world now?
Let me get on record to say that in terms of skill, in terms of his dribbling ability, in terms of his vision on the ball, I have never come across any player like Mohamed Polo. I mean, he was that good. And I remember very well on one occasion when Asante Kotoko played against Hearts of Oak, Danopong was the best right back in Africa. So everybody was wondering how Mohamed Polo was going to handle Danopong. And you'll be amazed. The manner in which he dealt with Danopong, everybody knew that Mohamed Polo had arrived. Every single match Polo played, he was almost the best player. He didn't score many goals, but he turned strikers into goal kings. So, for example, he produced Peter Lamptey as a goal king on 3 occasions. I mean, if Polo gave you a pass and you were unable to convert it, the fans would be so upset with you.
He told me, I met him once in the Africa Sports Office. I said, Michael, during my days, I will measure a pass for you. And if you don't score, the whole stadium will see that you have shot.
You know, unfortunately, Hearts of Oak had a striker, IP. And, I mean, Polo was that good. Anytime he gave IP a pass and IP fluffed the lines, the fans were so upset with him. I mean, Polo was that good. Look, he was so good when he decided to go to the United Arab Emirates. You have to see some of the footage of what he did in the United Arab Emirates. And they were so impressed with him that they gave him the license to bring a number of players from Ghana to the United Arab Emirates. So he sent his brother Ahmed, he sent Willie Kluche, he sent Isaac Akwe, and Francis Kumi.
So we're talking good Messi level.
I mean, Messi was quick. I mean, Messi is quick. I wouldn't say, you know, football has improved a lot. Yeah. It's become more scientific. It's become more dynamic with training methods changing. So it's influenced the game. But in terms of raw skill and the ability on the ball, Polo is just incomparable. I mean, he was so good. Anytime he arrived at the stadium, everybody just wanted to watch him. And he was very, very young. Before he got the opportunity to play, you know, Hearts of Oak had Lawal, who was the senior player. And Lawal had to move to Nigeria. And when Polo grabbed that opportunity, there was no turning back. And indeed, for the 11th slot for the Black Stars, absolutely nobody competed with Mohamed Polo for that spot. And let me put this on record. Look, if there is one single player in the world who is admired and cherished by the great Abedi Pele, it's Mohamed Polo. Yeah. I mean, he admired him so much when he decided to build his first house. He replicated the house of Mohamed Polo. If you speak to Abedi Pele,
Abedi Pele doesn't admire easily.
No. Because, look, as far back as 1986, when I watched the World Cup with Abedi, at that time, he hadn't even traveled to Europe. And I was quite intrigued by the fact that he was always critical of some of the players, how he could play better than what they were doing. Everybody was surprised about his utterances. So, as he said, he doesn't admire that easily. Yeah. For ability to sell on you as a good footballer, you must be very, very good. And Polo just is in a class of his own.
How many tournaments have you covered? Have you kept count?
From 1978, 82, then 84, we went to Buake.
The tournament of lefties.
Kofi Abre, Albert Asasi, Opokunti, Razak. Afrani was in charge. And you know, before the tournament, Osam Dudu was in charge of the team. And then unfortunately, the then FA president, Kate Caesar, had issues with the coach and decided to get rid of him. And I remember journalists in this country were in arms against Kate Caesar and warned him if the team failed to proceed deep in the tournament, he would lose his job. He didn't budge, and he decided to stick with Afrani, who picked the team. We went to Boake, and we were kicked out in the first round. And you know, those
head of then, yeah?
Absolutely. I mean, we had won the cup in 1982 at very short notice because the then president of the land, Hilal Liman, had decided Ghana would not participate in Libya, purely on political reasons. And then unfortunately for him, J. John Rawlings made a coup d'etat, got rid of him, and at very, very short notice decided Ghana should participate. The then chairman of the FA, S.K. Manu, decided at very short notice, put a team together, used his own finances and partly from the state to put the team together. But fortunately, there were remnants of the 78 squad, so it was quickly put together. We didn't know we were going to win the tournament, to be honest with you. Kwame Samson and others were very fresh in the team. Those were the early days of Abidipele and Opokunti, who were warming the bench. But Zion Train was there.
Was that Thomas watching?
No.
Okay.
No, it was later Thomas Wachi came. This is Zion Train, who played for Asian, who played for Hazakis at the time. George Alassan was in superb shape. Kofi Badu was in midfield. So we went out there. And unfortunately for us, we had problems with our goalkeepers, because Joseph Carr was a regular goalkeeper. For some strange reason, he decided he was unfit to be in the post. So we settled on the second goalkeeper, who was Baker, who also decided not to keep the post. So we settled on the third goalkeeper, Uzu Mensah. And in the end, he emerged the hero of the tournament with some tremendous saves. And that's how we won the tournament. So having won the tournament, nobody expected us to exit at the preliminaries in '84, when we were supposed to go and defend it. And we went to Boake, and we played against Algeria. Rabat Majer was flown in at very late hour. And he completely terrorized our defense. He scored 2 goals, and we lost 2 goals. Lost to Malawi, and then we exited the tournament. After '84, we did not qualify for the '86 tournament. Yeah. We didn't qualify for the '88 tournament. We didn't qualify for the 1990 tournament. And then qualify for the 1992, when Bukar Caesar came on the scene in 1991 and prepared the team. That was an incredible team. I mean, you know the 92 squad. Edian San, Tony Bafu. We didn't have many professionals at that time. But Bukar Caesar, at that time, knew Tony Bafu, and he brought him into camp. Together with Opogunti, there were very, very few professionals. And then Abidipele. Kosiapia was then the captain of the team. But as to how and when the captain's band changed, it's a whole story on its own. But that was an incredible team. After Bukar Caesar had qualified the team for the AFCON in Senegal, for some strange reason, the officials decided to get rid of him and bring Otofista on board.
After he had won the '91 World Cup with the under-17s.
With the Stars. Now, it was very, very strange, because it wasn't a footballing decision. Because many of the officials were not getting their way with Bukar Caesar, who was very, very strict, a strict disciplinarian. And you know, the practice at the time was that if the coach made his team, the welfare committee had to scrutinize the selection and determine whether it was good enough for the match or not. So I remember the late president of the land, Professor Mills, was the chairman of the welfare committee. The likes of Adahoy, Kwabena Yeboah was around, and then the former deputy finance minister. So Bukar Caesar was shocked that anybody should scrutinize
on TV that.
His selection before the game. So I remember we played against Nigeria in '91, and then before the game, members of the welfare committee had decided that Edward Ansan would not be in the post. He was in Nigeria, had come, and then the claim, the conspiracy theory, was that he had been bribed to come and keep the post, because Caesar thought he was an incredible goalkeeper. He wasn't going to compromise on that. And Abra, you know, he had watched the Nigerians and realized that the most dangerous player at the time was called Elahu. And he needed someone who was very, very strong on the right side of defense. Stanley Abra was very rugged in midfield. But because Caesar wanted to convert him into a defender. And, you know, at that time, all we knew was that a number 6 is a number 6, a number 2 is a number 2, because Caesar had his own idea. So he had friction with the team. Not just that. The team would go and stay at the City Hotel in Kumasi. And Caesar, he felt that the officials were inflating the bells. So Caesar would go behind them and check with officials how much. And nobody was going to tolerate that. So they got rid of him. And some of us were very, very unhappy. So with the likes of Comrade Japan and Papa Pencil, we started fighting for the retention of Bukar Caesar. And not many people know this, but because of this, I was arrested and sent to the BNI. And I think Papa Pencil had a hint of it and ran away. He's been in the US for a very long time. So I was sent to the BNI and very, very funny reasons.
How many days did you spend there?
Just a day. Just a day. I was very, very fortunate to be released, but it was quite funny. So Bukar Caesar left and then Autofista took over. So when Bukar Caesar decided to come to Senegal to watch the tournament, I mean, everybody was afraid to get near him. Indeed, the information was that whoever was found close to Bukar Caesar was going to be imprisoned back home. Comrade Japan just couldn't be bothered. He would dead the system and would go out in the night with Bukar Caesar. Yeah, so long story short, Autofista took over. We went to Senegal. Again, one of our great tournaments. Unfortunately, we couldn't win. I think the reason we couldn't win was because the maestro, Abedipele, missed the final.
That semi-final goal was incredible against Nigeria.
Absolutely. I mean,
he was the soul of that team. Wasn't he?
Listen, Pele, I used to go to his room, and he was quiet throughout. His level of concentration and focus was just incredible.
Moko Be, the maestro. Then he would break out into a small smile.
No. You know, Pele is another story in this one. We did a whole day's interview.
Abedi was crazy. He was
and for me, he was the reason I even watched Coles football.
Yeah.
Because those days, you know, they played the Coles football, and then they played the reserve side, and then they played the regular side. And I'll go to the stadium as early as 9 a.m. with the weekend's newspapers, go and read, waiting for Abedipele and his Gangola body and others. I mean, look, he was the only player in our history who from Coast football broke straight into the first team.
And everybody knew he was going to become a star, and he didn't disappoint.
I watched Pele over and over and over. I never watched a single game Abedi flopped. And almost every single game he played, he was the best player. Don't forget that with Olympique Marseille, when Olympique Marseille dominated Europe and dominated the domestic league, they had the trenchant trio with Papin and Chris Waddle. Yeah. And Pele was the third player. I mean, that's how good he was. So it's another conversation. There's a whole story on its own. And I think we will struggle to have a player like Abedipele. And that is why we continue to laud him up to now.
Do you think he's the greatest Ghana has ever produced?
I made this point the other time, and Osei Kofi was not too happy with me. But I think that they played at different generations. I saw just bits and pieces of Osei Kofi, Ibrahim Sane and others. I wasn't fully matured when I was watching them, but ever since I've watched football, I've never seen a player like Abedipele. Why do I make that point? Because he combined pace with skill, with goals, with energy, a bundle of energy. And almost every single match, he controlled the midfield. He could either score or provide passes for, the scorers. And I don't think I've come across any player like Abedipele. And I'm not surprised at all that he won the Africa Best on 3 different occasions. He would have won it on about 4 or 5 different occasions. But I think there was a period, for some strange reason, he wasn't too regular with the Black Stars. Yeah. And that particular year, Ponvia won the Africa Best. And I think it's something that he didn't understand. And he was told that because he wasn't playing in Africa.
Around 88 when he
That's
didn't
right.
want to be playing
That's
for the
right.
Black Stars.
You know, so once he came back, if he was that regular with us continuously, he would have won about 5 different occasions. I mean, that's how good Pele was.
If he was that good, why did he also divide opinion that much?
It's about his leadership, his style. He was a perfectionist. So as a leader, he wanted everybody to be whipped in line. And you know, footballers, if you're a leader and you're a leader of footballers, it doesn't work like that.
A pretty word must be compromise.
Absolutely. I mean, you need to court their respect instead of imposing things on them. But he thought he needed to keep everybody in line, and it didn't really sit well with everybody. So, for example, between him and Appiah, two contrasting styles.
Yeah. But you were caught in between the often very divisive Abedi Pele and Tony Yeboah conversation.
Yeah.
Was there a rivalry? What was the fuss about in the first place that two of our most accomplished players ever in Europe, you know, what was the big deal about?
You know, if you had a private conversation, not private, but if you had a public conversation with them, for example, if the two of them were caught on camera, they would deny that there was ever a rift between them. But if you spoke to them privately, you know, I don't think it was that intense, but they had their own little differences. Yeah. And I was privileged to be in both camps. So, for example, in 1992, whoever tells you that our team was not divided is lying to you. I was very close to the team. It was split down the line because people didn't like the manner in which the captain's band, for example, was taken away from Kwesi Appiah and given to Abedi Pele. So a divided opinion. I mean, the country was split down the line. And I remember when we went to Senegal, a number of the evenings, those who were sympathetic towards Tony Yeboah would move, meet in one camp. So I always saw the likes of Emmanuel Appiah or from Paul Manso.
You almost became a Kumasi versus Accra thing too, eh?
Of Safu Jamfi, Pokunti, Kwesi Appiah. But the strange thing is that people didn't know. Kwesi Appiah was very, very close to Abedi Pele. Although the band had been taken away from him, he didn't seem that peeved. He was still very, very close to Abedi Pele at that time, up till now, you know. And then in the Pele camp, you found the likes of Chenau, Prekon, you know, and yes, and it wasn't a very healthy situation. And I think the situation was exacerbated by the fact that when Abedi was going to miss the final, the band went to Tony Bafo. I mean, Yeboah was so livid. He was so livid. He didn't want to play the final. He took the likes of Abra Appiah and the leadership to prevail upon him to really play the final. So everybody was cold before the final. Everybody was shocked when Otto Pfister announced that Tony Bafo was going to be the captain for the final. And this is nothing to do with Tony Bafo. He was new to the team. He didn't know the politics of the team. Because the truth of the matter is that per convention, per tradition, the oldest playing member of the team was always the captain. And it's prevailed up to now. So why Tony Bafo was picked over Yeboah shocked everybody. The room was very quiet. And Otto Pfister told Yeboah, I think to appease him, that he was going to take the penalty if we had penalties. And he screamed at him, you know,
it was in the rooms those days.
I have been privileged up to now to be allowed into rooms, maybe because I know how to shut my mouth. And I know how to keep confidential information.
You should write a book.
I don't know what I can divulge in the book because it's a lot. So, for example, in 2012, during the AFCON in Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, too many things happened.
The infamous semi-final reaction.
Absolutely.
The flying chairs and the accusations.
It was unbelievable. And the only people in the room at that time was Kwesi Nyantakyi, the president of the side, and Anso, who was a management member, founder of Liberty Professionals, and Sly Tete. And then we had Anagbla, who was also in the room. Yeah. And then Plavi. So these were the only people who were in the room. And It was terrible. And it is a reason Plavi, in his confidential report to the FA, inserted that the FA must take steps to abuse the minds of the players of the use of juju, of superstition. Some of our colleagues didn't understand because they didn't have the background to that, you know. But it was quite hectic. It was quite hectic.
What was the most hectic scene you've seen in a Blaster, or the most dramatic scene that you've witnessed in your coverage of the Blaster?
That would be the 2012 incident. What happened in the room? I'm not allowed to put everything in the public domain, but I've never seen a thing like
This
that.
was players accusing other players of juju and
absolutely. I mean, I've never seen a thing like that in my life, where, I mean, boots were flying. It was insult after insult, and it was shocking because the officials just looked on. I mean, clueless as to precisely what was happening, and it was amazing.
The tension of wanting to win the Nations Cup got to everybody that
Absolutely, because I remember, and the shocking thing is that, because many of them believe so much in superstition, I mean, people who squandered certain chances put it down to superstition, engineered by some of their own colleagues. And then one player got injured. As I said, I'm not allowed to mention names. And he felt it was that player who caused his injury. And then Jan himself missed the penalty. He was crying the whole period. So it was one accusation after other, boots flying around, insults. So it was John Mensah, the captain on the side, who spoke finally, accusing the young boys of always misbehaving. I mean, it was that bad. I've never witnessed that in the Black Stars camp.
It was a lot for somebody who's been around since 1977.
No, it was that bad. Players would always have their differences, not because they don't like each other, but human nature being what it is, they go to come in, they form little cliques. The chemistry is such that, I mean, you are likely to bond with player A instead of player B. It doesn't mean you hate, other players. It's natural. But when it gets to a point where there is so much suspicion and mistrust, because I remember that particular tournament, for instance, when we were in Ngoni, there were times in the evenings the players would be gossiping that one particular player is missing from camp, and they don't know his whereabouts. They believe he's going to tighten grips on everybody. It was so ridiculous. I mean, you find it so ridiculous, but that is the belief system of quite a number of these players.
When I think back to 92, off the back of a lot of things that I've read, and I know the story of not necessarily 98 was, we were just bad in the group stages, basically. But 2012, 2013, the infamous episode of whether some players packed prostitutes in a hotel in Port Elizabeth, the 2015 Nations Cup final that we lost, and accusations that some wanted to take the penalty. Our inability to win a Nations Cup since 1982, has this been as self-inflicted as it's been a function of other countries being good?
I think, I'm one of the people who believe that it's not everything can explain in football. Journalists and fans try to explain everything in football. Yeah. I belong to a different school of thought. It's not everything can explain. Because how do you explain something you can get so close and yet so far? We should have won the trophy a number of times, unfortunately. For example, the 2010 AFCON, for instance, in the final game against Egypt, the number of chances we created and the fact that we failed to win the trophy. But the worst was the loss to Cote d'Ivoire. We took a 2-0 lead.
So angry that day.
In the penalty shootout, and somehow we flubbed the lines. So a combination of factors, not easily explicable. But you can also say some of them have been self-inflicted, because it's a reason Plavi advised the FA to take steps and to disabuse the minds of the players of the use of juju, if you want to call it superstition, whether we like it or not. I mean, people believe that football has grown so scientific that it's ridiculous for people to still believe in juju. But when it comes to issues of belief and some of these things, it's very difficult to stop people from believing what they want to believe. And that is why for the first time the team decided to employ psychologists in the team. Previously we never employed psychologists. So the first time, that was in 2006, when we went to the World Cup, we employed a psychologist. Strangely, I didn't see much of his work. And I remember on one occasion
if you don't say a nice thing, he'll call me later, Dr. Mfojo.
No, because I approached him.
Yeah.
I approached him and I said he needed to explain his job to me because I wasn't seeing much of the job. And then he explained to me that, for example, he had worked on Matthew Amoah.
One of those players who was always accused of missing chances.
That's right, And so maybe he did things I didn't really know or didn't really see. But that was the first time we started employing psychologists. But this issue of superstition is something that has bedeviled us for a very long time.
And it sort of led to disunity within the team. So
Absolutely.
in crucial moments, they are not
because strangely, players will accuse their colleagues of employing superstition against their progress, which sometimes I find very, very strange. But that is what they believe. Indeed, there have been some of the players who have decided to quit the national team because of superstition. There have been a number of times players have refused to wear certain jersey numbers because of superstition. There have been a number of times.
This is not hearsay.
No, I mean, I've witnessed, as I said, it's difficult to put names out. But these are real situations. And it's the reason you need a real psychologist to really lecture the players. And the sad thing is that, or the intriguing thing is that, quite a number of these players play their trade abroad, where everything is almost about science. But they'll still tell you that it doesn't matter. Even those players outside also believe in superstition. You can believe in superstition to an extent. When I say superstition, I can be superstitious. I'm a man of faith. I am a staunch believer of Christ, Jehovah. So, yes, before I write, I need to go through certain prayers. But prayer is not going to make you write well. You need to read. You need to learn the art of writing. You need to learn from others. So there's no way you're going to master your art just being superstitious. And I guess the reason it festers in a part of the world is because you have quite a number of people behind these things who are just charlatans, who just benefit from these players, take their money, give them all manner of promises. And when Jehovah God is giving you enormous talent, instead of giving credit to Jehovah God, you want to give it to some pastor or some malam somewhere, or being responsible for your greatness. It's so ridiculous. Yeah. And I think that we've come to a point where urgent steps must be taken to lecture these boys to understand that, number one, God gives talents. You must hone your talent. The game has become so scientific to the extent that what you eat is a factor, and that's why these days, for the first time, I think I was at the Black Stars and I saw Mali, the movie dietitians, and then there were babes that even determine your work rate. The game is getting that scientific. So people, it's so ridiculous that we, in this part of the world, still believe in superstition.
The 2006 World Cup, we had been waiting for so long. I dropped a tear during the national anthem. What was your emotion for that first game against Italy?
It was incredible. I mean, we hadn't qualified for the World Cup for a very long time. And the reason is very simple. It's not because we lack talent. But strangely, those days, we didn't pay attention to the World Cup. When the North Africans were very eager for the World Cup, we were interested in the Africa Cup of Nations. So there were periods when the AFCON would clash with World Cup qualifiers, and the North Africans would just abandon the Africa Cup of Nations. That was how serious they were with the World Cup. We're not paying attention to the World Cup. It's not because we lack talent. And then when we had constantly touted our credentials as four-time Africa champions, when the likes of Algeria, Tunisia, Cameroon, Nigeria had been to the World Cup a number of times, Ghanaians suddenly started getting irritated by the fact that we're four-time Africa champions. It no longer made any meaning to us.
Especially when the World Cup became so popular on TV after
1990 and 94. Absolutely. And so we started paying attention. And I want to give great credit to the then FA president, Kwesi Nyantakyi. I doubt that if he wasn't around, we could have qualified for the World Cup.
He came though after the, I think was it the Nyaho Tamaklo?
2005, yeah, Nyaho Tamaklo.
Kofi Amwa
Yeah,
era.
no, Nyaho Tamaklo was then the FA president, and he felt he had been undermined by the then members of Galka and the football fraternity. So he decided to take the matter to court. No, he decided to take the matter to court. And I remember advising against it. And at that time, my very good friend Samuel Kante was his chief advisor. And I advised against it because I told them FIFA would clamp down on us. And FIFA frowned on footballing issues being taken to court. And the reaction from them was that even Sepp Blatter, who was then the FIFA president, had gone to court. But you can go to court on the non-football issues. If you are defamed, if you are scandalized, you can decide to go to court. But not on the purely footballing issue. And Yahoo, when they decided to go to court, FIFA then decided, because they didn't know the hybrid of our system, where government officials and the football guys had a mix. FIFA...
They decided at the time they didn't want it again at all.
They didn't want it. So they decided we should review our statutes. And who was in charge of the review team? It was Kwesi Nyantakyi. And then after that, he became the FA president. And I want to put it on record that he played such a key role in our qualification to the World Cup in 2006. And finally, when we made it to the World Cup, it was incredible.
Did you cry that day against Italy?
I was privileged to be with the team in Scotland before we touched down in Germany, because I flew from London to Scotland when we played against South Korea in that friendly. And you know, before that game, we were still struggling with who the number one goalkeeper had to be, whether it should be Richard Kissing Olele or Sami Ajayi. We had been to Germany for some friendly games. The officials were still not convinced who should pick the number one slot until we played against South Korea. And finally, you know, Sami Ajayi kept one half and Olele kept the other. That was the day they settled on Olele. So we flew from Edinburgh to Germany. And when we touched down, I was like, this is the World Cup. And I was just...
What was it about that was that it was in the welcome, the facilities, the mood? What was it that made you think,
first of all,
many trips, this is different?
The atmosphere is very, very different at that level. It's not like the AFCON in terms of the organization, in terms of the facilities. And you know, Germany, before the World Cup, had sent an emissary in Franz Beckenbauer to the whole of Africa and around the world to let people know that Germany were ready for the World Cup. In at that time, Germany had been touted as a set of human beings who were very cold towards visitors. And they wanted to disabuse the minds of the world, you know, about that. So they were very, very warm. It was incredible, the facilities. And we settled in Wolfsburg. I'm sure, I remember you were with us. So I happened to be quite close to the team. And again, the leadership of Stephen Appiah, when we touched down in Cologne, and our leader, Ghana's ambassador, with a delegation of Ghanaians came and met the team. I sat next to John Mensah, who was then the second in command. And after the ambassador had spoken, when Stephen was expected to react, he turned to John Mensah, who sat next to me, and said, John, this is your time. And I was like, this is a leader. Stephen served the people. He did not lord over the people. And the people, the players reciprocated. Because in Germany, he wasn't the biggest star. The biggest star at the time was Michael Essien, who was huge. And anytime the team was going for training sessions, for instance, Essien would be the last to board the bus. And as he's about to board the bus, there is a queue there asking for autographs.
And then there were those who were singing outside Samikufo's window every morning.
and you know, at press conferences, Stephen never spoke about himself. He always spoke about Michael Essien. So his leadership is something else. And I've said it time and time, again and again, that I've never come across a captain like Stephen Appiah. And I've had the privilege of seeing quite a number of captains. Stephen is in a class of his own. and I will recommend his style to everybody.
Yeah.
I remember when Jordan took over the band, he sought my advice, and I went to him and I said, if you want to be a successful captain, serve the players, and they will reciprocate. What players cannot stand are captains who try to lord their leadership over them. They will rebel in a way. But if you serve them, if you respect them, they will reciprocate and play for the team.
That tournament, though, was a good eye-opener, but 2010 was better.
2010, you know, this is something that not many people talk about. You know, 2006 was our first experience. And, you know, before the start of the tournament, not many Ghanaians gave the Black Stars any chance at all, particularly because all our opponents were rated way above us.
Top 10 in the world, eh?
Top 10 in the world.
Yeah.
Italy, the Czech Republic.
And the USA.
Peter Cech was the best goalkeeper in the world at the time. Yeah. You know,
Siki and the rest.
That's right. Not many people gave the Black Stars a dog's chance. So all of us were surprised that we sailed through to the next round of the competition. But having sailed to the next round, I think that the concentration of the boys dimmed. Because I remember before the game against Brazil, quite a number of the boys did not sleep well that night, a day before the match. As late as 2 3 a.m., some of the boys were still loitering around because in their minds, they had achieved the ultimate. Because we're the only African team to qualify for the second round of the competition. Yeah. And we're going to play against Brazil. So it was like, if you lose against Brazil, it's not such a big deal. You know, so I think we had limited ambition at the time, which really cost us because we could have matched Brazil. If you check the statistics,
very poor in the game against Brazil. Eh?
No, if you check the statistics, in terms of possession, we're even better than Brazil. The finishing was very, very bad. We were setting very poor offside traps, you know, which didn't really help us. But not many people were critical of the team because we had qualified for the second round.
Yeah.
But in 2010 was extraordinary. And I think one player, in my opinion, who made a lot of difference in our team in 2010 was Kevin Prince Boateng.
Yeah.
Kevin Prince Boateng, if you remember, played for Portsmouth. They had won the FA Cup. They had been relegated and was eager for a nationality switch. He was put so much pressure on us for that nationality switch, you know, because the World Cup is the biggest stage. Who doesn't want to play, you know, on the world stage? And I think he was huge in midfield. I mean, Stephen was just returning from injury, so he didn't play. But I think John Mensah was great in central defense. Inkum was brilliant, especially the role Milo used him. So we had a wonderful time, and the rest is history. When we lost against Uruguay, it will go down as one of my lowest moments.
You were running commentary that day?
I was running commentary,
what
and
Siki
Akono was my summarizer.
A bad combination. on a night like that, how did the two of you react?
I mean, I had sacked myself because, you know, we had the privilege of going for this training in Paris before the World Cup, and we had been psyched to dissociate ourselves from our teams and be as professionals as we could. So I was in that frame of mind, and I wasn't a Ghanaian when I was running commentary at the time. I tried very hard to be as neutral as possible. So when it's very sad moment. When Jam missed that penalty, Siki Akono just slumped in the chair and had to be revived. Water was poured on him. I don't think he remembers some of the things that he told me. Because when he woke up from that seat, I remember him telling me whether I knew, I'm not going to mention names, whether I knew this player was a fisherman and whether I knew this player was a cash player, whether I knew, I don't think he remembers some of the things. He was completely out of this world. It was so sad because we were kicked away from the semi-final. It would have been the first African nation to get to the semi-final. And I was so cocksure that if we had gone into the semi-final and played the Netherlands, we would have gone into the final. I mean, the team was playing that well. There was cohesion. there was self-belief, there was confidence, and Jan was at his peak. You know, he made such a difference in the team. We had a striker who could convert and put pressure on the opponents. And again, let me put on record, for me, in the career of Andre Didayo, it's been his best period.
Yeah.
Yes, he won
The 2010 World Cup was good.
Absolutely. He won the World Cup, the Under-20 World Cup, but you know the world doesn't really pay attention to youth tournaments. Yeah. But the World Cup for me in 2010 was his best period. For some strange reason, you know, Suleiman Tari was supposed to play that role, and then he fell out with Milo, and then they suddenly slaughtered him, and he was brilliant. Yeah. You know, it would go down as his best period for the Black Stars, the 2010 World Cup. So the team played that well, but as I say, Kevin made a lot of difference in that team. It's a shame we exited the way we did.
And then in 2014, our own friend Kwesi Appiah. Yeah. Problems with Kevin, problems with Sule, overall an episode that some say sort of dampened his reputation as Ghana coach. But I look at Kwesi Appiah and I still think man deserves more respect.
I think he's one of the most underestimated managers ever produced in this country. And when I hear certain personalities hypercritical and vilify him, I get surprised. And I'm asking myself, exactly what is it about football you know that Kwesi Appiah does not know? Yeah. This is a personality who is seen it all in football, from coach level through the youth football. And people forget that the Under-23 national team was the captain of the team. He captained the Black Stars. He won the Africa Cup with Asante Kotoko. He was assistant coach under Malik. He coached Kotoko. He coached Goldfields. He was assistant coach under 5 managers at the Black Stars level, 2008 under Claude Leroy. He was an assistant under Tukefiu, under Milo. Milo would not move without Kwesi Appiah. He's seen it all. And then he did his badges in the UK and came and handled the national team. How would anybody trace problems that we encountered in Brazil to the doorsteps of Kwesi Appiah? That was a monetary issue. He had absolutely no control over that. So when people use this cliche, and many journalists are very tempted to use that cliche.
I've had some pretty big fights.
He lost the dressing room. And you're wondering precisely what is it that he lost. You know, I'm saying that there was an issue with money. The players didn't want to trust anybody. They didn't want to trust the FA president. They didn't want to trust the Minister of State at the time, Elvis Afriankra. They wouldn't trust anybody. To the extent that when the president of the land, the number one gentleman of the land, decided to call them and ask them to go for training, they still would not go and train. And I really, really shed tears. And I was so angry with the team because my position was that you do not place money above issues of nationalism. You don't do that. For me, it's inexcusable, and I would never accept that. Not when the president of the land had assured you that your money was on his way. And there's a reason the president had to fly the money. And then with the benefit of hindsight, people started criticizing him. I never criticized him. Do you know the situation in which if the money had been flown and the boys had really boycotted the games, same people would have turned around to accuse President Mahama of not flying money. Exactly what was it? About $3 million. So for me, at that time, the players stabbed us in the back. Kevin Prince Boateng, if I had my way, would never be at the World Cup in 2014. Why? Because after the 2010 World Cup, when Ghana had prepared the ground for him to launch a big career with AC Milan, he turned his back on us. For 4 years, he decided to retire from international football. And then resurfaced when we qualified for the World Cup. And I remember having a conversation with Kwesi Appiah. I said, you can't do that. You can't stop the people who aided you to qualify for the Cup of Nations and bring these guys. He listened. He wouldn't talk, typical of Kwesi. And he decided to fly them. Unfortunately, they created a lot of problems for him. And at a point, he had to get rid of him from camp. It was a bit chaotic. But even with all the problems in 2014, which cannot be traced to the doorsteps of Kwesi Appiah, but it's because of the way we managed our monetary issues. Even with that, we didn't embarrass ourselves. We played against Germany, a game in which the FIFA Technical Committee rated as the best match of the entire tournament. Apart from drawing with Ghana, Germany went ahead to beat every single team in 2014, including host Brazil by 7 goals to 1. How dare you describe such a coach as someone who doesn't know what he's about? But thank God, he went on to Sudan and proved all of us wrong. How did he prove us wrong? Sudan were at war. They were not playing their games on home soil, away from home. We happened to be in the same group with them for AFCON qualification. We drew with them in Accra. They beat us on neutral ground by 2 goals to 0. And they qualified for the World Cup. That same year, the Chang Championship, Ghana did not qualify because he qualified Sudan, war-torn Sudan, to the Chang Championship. In the World Cup qualifiers, in a group that included Senegal. He led the group for a very long time until the last hour when Senegal tilted the scales. How can you describe such a person as somebody who doesn't know what he's about? I think we're being so unfair to him. And anytime the issue of Kwesi, I think it has to do with the way he communicates, his demeanor. Sometimes you are very tempted to underestimate him because, naturally he's a very quiet person. That is why when he wrote his book, the caption was, leaders don't necessarily yell. There are coaches who have different characters. Arsene Wenger will sit on the bench without necessarily screaming. But you have Diego Simeone, who is very animated. Alex Ferguson will be quiet on the bench. We have different types of demeanors and characters on the bench. But sometimes I think he's the most underestimated coach in this country. In fact, there's a reason when Otto Addo was sacked, a number of fans felt that considering the brief period we had for the World Cup, he could have slotted in perfectly. But of course, that's another story.
So Queiroz has slotted in.
Yeah.
I've heard you say that Queiroz has his background is nice, easy, but you're also warning against unrealistic expectations, aren't you?
I was really surprised. I don't know how people see coaches, whether they are magicians. I can't get it.
You've always had this debate.
I've always said, that is not to say coaches don't play a role. So for example, I think that Michael Carrick has been brilliant for Manchester United. Amorim had it completely wrong. So coaches play a role. There's no question about that. But I think we tend to exaggerate it.
Yeah.
So Carlos Queiroz comes, and what do? At the airport, as if he's the one who was going to score the goal. The whole national anthem is played. I need to be corrected, but I don't remember the last time a coach arrived in the country where the national anthem was played.
Yeah, this was grand.
This was grand. It's all because of the expectation from him. And so the national anthem is played, and he's been given a title. It's Cerebral Kwesi, Carlos. And you should know that if you see the euphoria, the ecstasy, the razzmatazz, everybody believes that whether we're going to go deep in the tournament or not will depend on Carlos Queiroz. That is not the way I look at it. If you're assessing teams, I think it's important to look at your team. If people think that it is Carlos Queiroz who's going to ensure our deep run in the tournament, well, he's been in the World Cup before with Iran. They didn't exceed the group stage. Not because he was such a bad coach, because Iran did not have the materials. It's as simple as that.
Thank you very much, Kwabena. It's been an absolute pleasure. How many minutes have we been on? 1 hour. I took the big man's 90 minutes today. Thank you immensely.
You're welcome.